The bathroom smelled like lavender and iron. I sat in the tub, the blade cool against my palm. The water lapped at my skin, warm and deceptive. Crimson spread through it like ink, curling into delicate tendrils, dissolving into nothing. I exhaled shakily, pressing the razor against my wrist again. Just a little deeper, just a little more. The door slammed open. "Li Wei!" Jun's voice. Sharp, panicked. I didn't react, didn't even flinch as he stormed across the bathroom and yanked me out of the water. His hands gripping my arms with bruising force. "What the fuck are you doing?" His voice cracked, his breathing ragged as he pressed his hands over the fresh wounds, his fingers slick with my blood. I blinked up at him, dazed. "What does it look like?" My voice was barely above a whisper. Jun's hands shook. "You're..." He swallowed hard. "You're so fucking stupid." I laughed, or maybe sobbed. "I thought you wanted to break me." Something in his expression shattered. "Not like this." The next moments blurred. Jun wrapped a towel around my wrists, pressing down hard, muttering curses under his breath. He called for help, his voice raw, desperate. "Stay awake, damn it," he growled. "If you die, I'll fucking kill you." I wanted to tell him that didn't make sense, that I was already gone. But my vision dimmed, and the last thing I felt was Jun's arms tightening around me, his breath warm against my temple as he whispered, "Don't go." When I woke up, the hospital lights were too bright, and Jun was sitting beside the bed, his head in his hands. For the first time in his life, Zhao Jun was crying. The hospital room felt too small, too suffocating. The walls pressed in on me. The steady beeping of the monitors too loud. Every movement made my skin crawl. Every reminder of where I was and who was beside me made my chest tighten with anger. Jun was there, always there. Not outside the door, not waiting in silence, but right beside me, never leaving my side. I hated him for it. "You don't have to stay," I muttered one evening, my voice rough from disuse. I didn't look at him. I never did. "I do," he replied, voice steady, betraying none of the exhaustion I knew he felt. "I have to make sure you're okay." I clenched my fists under the blanket. "I don't want you here." A pause. Then quieter. "I know." He helped the nurses adjust my pillows, making sure I was comfortable even when I twisted away from his touch. He sat beside me when the doctor spoke, nodding at their words even though I refused to acknowledge them. He held the cup of water out for me when I was too weak to hold it myself, and I almost knocked it out of his hand out of spite. I should have, but I didn't. He left meals on the tray, arranging them neatly like I mattered. I ignored them for days, letting them sit untouched. And yet every time he brought another, his patience never wavered. One day I woke to a napkin beside my meal, a simple sketch of a flower in unsteady strokes. I stared at it for a long time, my fingers ghosting over the ink. I didn't throw it away, but I wanted to. More days passed, each one the same. Jun adjusting my blanket when he thought I was asleep. Jun speaking in hushed tones to the doctors when he thought I wasn't listening. Jun watching me like I was something fragile, something breakable, something worth saving. I hated him for it. And yet, one evening when hunger clawed at my stomach, I gave in. I picked up the spoon, hands trembling slightly, and ate. Jun said nothing, but I felt his eyes on me, quiet and hopeful. It was enough to make my chest ache. It took months before I could say his name without choking on it. Another before I could walk beside him without fear shadowing my every step. Jun never rushed me, never asked for more than I was willing to give. But he stayed. One spring morning, we sat by the lake, watching petals drift across the water like memories too light to sink. The silence between us was not heavy, not suffocating like before. It simply existed, like we did. Jun shifted beside me, reaching into his bag. "Here," he murmured, holding something out. I hesitated before accepting it, my fingers brushing against his. A sketchbook. My breath caught in my throat. I traced the edges of it, my chest tight with something I couldn't name. "I thought you might want to draw again," he said, his voice softer than I had ever heard it. I didn't move, didn't even breathe as I opened it. The first page held a drawing of a cherry blossom tree, its branches reaching for the sky in uneven, rough strokes. Jun's work, clumsy, unpolished, but unmistakably his. My fingers pressed against the page. The ink had bled slightly, like he had hesitated too long before finishing it. "I'm sorry," he whispered, voice breaking. I looked at him, really looked at him, and I saw it, the weight he carried, the pain he tried to swallow down. And for the first time, I understood. John had never known love, only control, only power. He had twisted love into cruelty because that was what he had been taught, to own, to possess, to break. His father had raised him to believe perfection was the only thing that mattered. That affection was something won through obedience, through fear. His father, a man who built an empire on broken spirits, had molded June into something unfeeling, something obedient. Praise only came when he succeeded, when he met impossible expectations. Failure was met with silence, or worse. June had grown up without warmth, without kindness. He had learned to equate control with love because that was the only version of love he had ever known. But now, he was learning, and I, despite everything, was willing to let him. My lips trembled before curving upward, small, fragile, uncertain. John inhaled sharply, his body going still. The wind carried the scent of cherry blossoms around us, petals floating in lazy spirals across the lake. For once, the past didn't feel so heavy. For once, I let myself believe in something more than pain. John would spend the rest of his life protecting that smile. And for the first time, I thought maybe, just maybe, I would let him. Time passed to our final year, and though the scars on my skin faded, the ones inside still lingered like shadows. But June never wavered. He was steady, constant, always waiting. One evening, we stood in the villa's garden beneath the moonlight, the scent of jasmine and earth heavy in the air. I turned to face him, the silver glow illuminating his face, older, softer, filled with something that had once been foreign to him. Love, real and untainted. "Jun," I whispered, my voice unwavering. "I forgive you." His breath hitched. "You shouldn't." "I know," I said, stepping closer. "But I want to." He swallowed hard, his hands shaking as they reached up, cupping my face as if I might disappear. "I love you," he confessed, voice raw, stripped of every facade. "But I don't know how to love you the way you deserve." I smiled, pressing my forehead against his. "Then let me teach you." His lips found mine, hesitant at first, then desperate, years of pain and longing pouring into the kiss. When we finally pulled away, I traced my fingers down his jaw, looking at the man who had once been my greatest fear but had become my safest place. "You can't break me anymore," I murmured, "but maybe you can help me rebuild." John nodded, tears glistening in his eyes. "I'll never hurt you again," he vowed. And this time I believed him.